You say that you found this quote secret sauce. I don't know, loose term. I use that all the time as well. That will actually help companies become top workplaces. That is, if they meet three needs for human flourishing, which is really the topic of your TEDx talk. So I want you to unpack those three human needs for us. What are they?
Yeah. Oh man, Marcel, this is where it gets exciting. At least for me, this is good. This gets really exciting because this is the secret sauce. So the first need that we all have, again, it's this feeling of safety. Okay, and so when we have that fundamental need met, and many workplaces, they're doing this, and really they don't have to do much. They have to provide a benefits and a paycheck. So that's basic need. But then it goes further. The second need is satisfaction. That we all have this need to do things that are enjoyable. And again, coming back to my survey that I looked at, or those top workplaces, they met this need because they said, we do fun things here. There's opportunities for professional development. It's a happy environment. There's these perks that we have. We have picnics and we do fun things together. And so I thought, interesting. Okay, so there's those two needs that are fundamental. This third need is really where it stands out. And this is really where I hope we go today. It's
Yeah.
this, we're all born, Marcel, with this longing for belonging, this craving for connection. And that is the secret sauce. Is these workplaces, they meet the need of safety, satisfaction, and ultimately it is about connection. It's
Mm.
about relationships. Relationship, that is fundamental. That is the secret sauce. And I found out only about 36% of workplaces meet all three of these fundamental human needs.